Israel Antiquities Authority inspectors following suspected antiquities traffickers across Mount Scopus in February 2026 watched 5 suspects carrying a generator and quarrying equipment disappear into what looked like just another limestone cavity. And when officers moved in for the arrest and entered the cave themselves, what appeared on the floor made everyone stop breathing. Not stolen artifacts, not a looter's stash. Hundreds of carved stone fragments, scattered exactly where ancient craftsmen had left them 2,000 years ago, covered in white dust, surrounded by unfinished pieces abandoned mid-production. The chamber had been sealed since 70 CE, and what it contained would rewrite everything archaeologists believed about ancient Jerusalem. Before we break down why stone vessels were the only containers Jews could legally use under ritual purity laws that governed every meal and every drink in first-century Jerusalem, why this sealed workshop proves an organized industrial network supplied the city with thousands of these vessels from multiple production sites, and what the unfinished pieces scattered across the cave floor tell us about the exact moment this 2,000-year-old economy collapsed. Subscribe to Vault of Discovery. The discovery begins weeks earlier when Israel Antiquities Authority Theft Prevention Unit inspectors noticed fresh excavation marks at the Ras Tamim site on the eastern slope of Mount Scopus. The ridge overlooks Jerusalem from the east, covered in dry, pale limestone cut with natural cavities that have hidden archaeological treasures for millennia. Someone was digging. The marks suggested attempts to reach an underground space. Surveillance teams moved into position. For days, inspectors watched the site from concealed locations, documenting movement, identifying suspects, waiting for the right moment to catch the entire operation in the act. And here's the first shocking twist. Late one night, officers executed the raid. 5 suspects were arrested, some inside a cave, others standing guard above ground as lookouts. The group admitted to illegal excavation during questioning. Prosecutors prepared charges carrying up to 5 years in prison. But when IAA inspectors secured the area and entered the cave themselves, what they found wasn't what anyone expected. The floor was covered with hundreds of fragments made from chalk limestone. Broken vessel pieces lay beside piles of stone chips, and scattered throughout the chamber were unfinished items. Cups half-carved, bowls abandoned mid-production, cylindrical cores drilled out of solid rock and left exactly where craftsmen had been working when something catastrophic ended production. Think about what this actually means. The cave wasn't a storage site. It wasn't a hiding place. This was a complete working factory from the late Second Temple period, a limestone quarry and stone vessel workshop that operated continuously right up until the moment it was abandoned 2,000 years ago. The soft chalk limestone was perfect for carving. Artisans could hollow out cups, bowls, and storage jars using iron tools and primitive lathes. The preserved drilling cores show the exact sequence of production steps. The waste piles reveal how much material was removed to create a single vessel. And the unfinished pieces tell a story archaeologists rarely get to see, the moment an entire industry stopped. But the second devastating revelation came when researchers understood what these vessels actually were. Under Jewish law during the Second Temple period, stone vessels did not contract ritual impurity the way pottery or metal containers did. Clay vessels that touched anything ritually impure had to be destroyed. Metal vessels required complex purification. But stone? Stone stayed pure. For Jews living in Jerusalem between roughly 50 BCE and 70 CE, when adherence to purity laws reached unprecedented levels, stone containers weren't a preference, they were a necessity. Read that again. Every meal, every drink, every food storage container in observant Jewish households required vessels that couldn't become impure. Rabbinic sources describe an outbreak of purity in Israel during the late Second Temple period, a phrase that captures how pervasive and strict the purity laws had become. Archaeologists have found ritual baths in private homes, villages, and urban neighborhoods across Jerusalem and Judea. Large public mikvahot stood near the temple for pilgrims to purify themselves before entering. And in every household that followed these laws, stone vessels replaced pottery for daily use. Think about the economics. Jerusalem's population may have reached 80,000 during major festivals when pilgrims flooded the city. Every family needed multiple stone containers. Vessels broke. Demand was constant. And the Mount Scopus workshop wasn't alone. Similar production sites have been discovered in the Judean Hills, another workshop found during construction of the Naomi Shemer Tunnel near Mount Scopus, additional facilities uncovered north of Jerusalem in Hizma, and smaller quarry workshops at Tel El Ful and Jebel Mukabir. Together, these sites reveal an organized manufacturing network that supplied stone vessels across the region. Then came the third twist that changes everything about how we understand ancient Jerusalem's economy. The Mount Scopus cave's location wasn't random. It sat directly on the main road Jewish pilgrims used when approaching Jerusalem from the east. From Jericho, from the Jordan River crossing, from the Dead Sea region. Alongside the workshop, archaeologists have found huge water reservoirs, a purification bath, mikveh, and a limestone quarry. The entire complex served pilgrims traveling to the temple. Think about that journey. Pilgrims walked for days across the Judean desert, arriving dusty and ritually impure from travel. Before entering Jerusalem, they needed to purify themselves. The mikveh at Mount Scopus provided ritual immersion. And right there, at the entrance to the Holy City, the workshop sold stone vessels pilgrims could use to maintain their purity while visiting the temple. The location was strategic. The business model was brilliant. The demand was guaranteed. And here's where the mystery deepens. The workshop operated continuously for decades, producing thousands of vessels. The volume of waste material in the cave, broken fragments, stone chips, drilling cores, indicates steady, large-scale production. Archaeologists found partially drilled blocks showing exactly how artisans hollowed each piece from a solid chunk of rock. Smaller vessels were made on mobile lathes. Larger containers required permanent, complex lathes. And excavators recovered iron spikes and metal fittings that were probably parts of these larger machines. But the fourth twist is the one that haunts every archaeologist who has studied this site. Production stopped abruptly. The unfinished vessels, the tools left in place, the drilling cores abandoned mid-process. Everything suggests the workshop was operating normally and then suddenly ceased. And the timing matches exactly with one of the most catastrophic events in Jewish history, the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE. Think about what happened. In 66 CE, Jewish rebels launched the first Jewish revolt against Roman occupation. For 4 years, Jerusalem held out against Roman legions. But in 70 CE, the Romans breached the walls. They burned the Second Temple. They slaughtered thousands. They expelled the entire Jewish population. And in that moment, the stone vessel industry that had thrived for over a century died completely. The Mount Scopus workshop tells that story through absence. The craftsmen who carved these vessels didn't close up shop and walk away. They fled, or they died, or they were among the thousands expelled from Jerusalem when the Romans ended Jewish life in the city. The cave sealed itself through centuries of neglect and sediment accumulation. And 2,000 years later, looters tried to break in, not knowing they were about to expose a time capsule that archaeologists didn't even know existed. But the final game-changing truth emerges from understanding how completely this discovery rewrites archaeological assumptions about Second Temple Jewish life. Before the Mount Scopus workshop was found, historians knew about stone vessels from household excavations and religious texts. They understood the purity laws theoretically, but seeing a complete production facility, with the manufacturing process preserved in every stage from raw limestone to finished cup, proved something more profound. This wasn't a niche industry serving ultra-observant elites. This was mass production, serving widespread demand across Jerusalem's entire population. The sheer scale of the Mount Scopus operation, combined with multiple workshops spread across the Judean hills, indicates that adherence to purity laws had penetrated deeply into everyday Jewish life. Stone vessels weren't luxury items. They were standard household goods. And the fact that this industry supported itself economically, that workshops could operate profitably for decades, tells you how many families were observing these laws strictly enough to replace all their pottery with stone. Think about what that means for understanding ancient Judaism. The Roman historian Josephus described Jerusalem before its destruction as a city obsessed with ritual purity. Modern scholars sometimes dismiss this as exaggeration, but the archaeological evidence now confirms it. The outbreak of purity mentioned in rabbinic texts wasn't theological rhetoric, it was economic reality. An entire manufacturing sector existed to support it. Multiple workshops, organized supply chains, steady production for decades. And then, total collapse in 70 CE, when Roman soldiers burned Jerusalem and the temple economy that sustained this industry disappeared overnight. Dr. Eitan Klein, deputy director of the IAA Theft Prevention Unit, noted that the discovery helps paint a vivid picture of religious Jewish life in the final decades before the temple's destruction. The stone vessels weren't just containers. They were physical manifestations of how deeply religious law shaped daily routines, household choices, and economic behavior. And the sealed workshop preserves that moment in history better than any text or inscription ever could. The artifacts recovered from the Mount Scopus cave are now on display in the exhibition Criminal Past at the J. and Jeannie Schottenstein National Campus for the Archaeology of Israel. The exhibition traces items seized from illegal excavations, showing the path from unauthorized digging to the antiquities market. But the Mount Scopus vessels tell a different story. These fragments didn't reach the black market. They stayed exactly where ancient craftsmen left them 2,000 years ago, waiting in the dark while empires rose and fell above them, until 5 looters with a metal detector accidentally led archaeologists to a discovery that rewrites our understanding of daily life in ancient Jerusalem. One thing is absolutely certain. A complete stone vessel workshop sat sealed on Mount Scopus for 2,000 years, preserving manufacturing techniques, production waste, and unfinished pieces that show exactly how an ancient industry operated, and exactly when it collapsed. The Mount Scopus cave proves that ritual purity laws shaped Jerusalem's economy so profoundly that an entire manufacturing network existed to support them, that thousands of families replaced pottery with carved limestone in their homes, and that when Rome destroyed the Second Temple in 70 CE, the industries that depended on temple-centered religious life disappeared so completely that workshops were simply abandoned with tools and unfinished vessels still inside. So ask yourself, how many other sealed chambers sit waiting under Jerusalem, preserving moments when entire economies, entire ways of life, ended so abruptly that people simply walked away and never came back?